Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to say a little bit about immigration, and I also want to talk a little bit about Jeremy Hunt's autumn statement, or his budget, or whatever they call it these days, and I also want to mention one or two other things that have caught my eye, including evidence, I think, that our Prime Minister is deliberately attempting to mislead the COVID inquiry, something which is not getting very much attention as yet. But to begin with immigration. Now, it was announced that revised figures showed that last year, 2022, 1.2 million people came to this country, and 500-odd thousand emigrated. So net immigration last year was 754,000. Now, when the Tories, when Johnson held his Get Brexit Done election in 2019, it was in the manifesto that they would do what they could to get immigration down. At that time, it stood at 1/3 of what it is now, 226,000, and they wanted to get that down. Of course, a lot of those immigrants were people from the EU who'd come here to work and to live. So it's now 3 times as much as what it was then, and there doesn't seem to be any sign that it's going to come down. And it's interesting to note that of those, that 1.2 million, 91% were people from countries outside the EU. In other words, the EU immigration is down to 9%. In other words, you can say that we've been successful. We've managed to stop all these terrible European people coming here and using the NHS and taking all our jobs. That's all gone. And now to replace them, we've had to get people from other countries. And the interesting thing about people from other countries is that they generally come from countries a long way away. For example, this 1.2 million, 250-odd thousand of them are from India. 150,000 are from Nigeria. A lot of the others are from China, 90-odd thousand, but those are mostly students who come here to study in our best universities, and they go back and they're even more capable of competing with us, or make it more and more difficult for us to ever compete with them. And then there are people from Bangladesh and Ghana and all sorts of different places, but all from third world countries. And people who come from those countries to work in the UK, they come because they're invited. You know, we're advertising all over the world to replace people, Europeans who've gone home, and they generally want to bring their families with them. So whereas before you'd perhaps get a nurse from Spain and she'd come here and she'd work and for a couple of years and go again, now you get a nurse from Bangladesh. Well, she wants to come and live here. She doesn't want to come on her own. She wants to bring her wife and her husband and her 3 children. And so inevitably, for every worker we need now, we've got to allow a lot more to come because we're admitting families. I did mention something I heard about. My son knew somebody who worked with one of these delivery companies, these like Deliveroo, the little motorbikes running around delivering food. And at that company, they had 3 Filipino guys working there. And these 3 guys were now living in the UK, and they'd come with their wives, and I think between them they had 7 children, so 13 people. And of those 13 people, the 7 children would all need schooling, and all 13 of them would need to be able to use the National Health Service because they're all now living and working in the UK. And the only reason that those 13 human beings were able to come here was because the 3 women were nurses, and we need nurses, you see, and you can't get them unless they're going to bring their families. So inevitably, immigration is bound to increase. And even students, when students come here, they bring dependents if they want to, and a lot of these students, they apply to have their visas changed to work visas when they've finished studying, and so they stay on. A lot of them disappear into the black economy, and we've heard so many stories, so many scandals, we're reading it all the time about workers who come here. Perhaps they come to work on farms and things, and they come from Vietnam or wherever, the other side of the earth, and they're told that when they get here they're going to pay lots of money and all the rest of it, and they come and they find the accommodation is terrible, there isn't enough work, and the pay isn't as much, and there are all sorts of deductions and so on. They find they just can't exist, they can't afford to go home, so they just disappear into the black economy. And anyone who wanted to become a permanent a criminal in this country, and coming from, I don't know, Nigeria, perhaps they can't find people who are prepared to fork out money to get access to £5 billion in a suitcase, which has been left from some Arab who's died, and all these cons, and so they might want to come here. All you got to do is just get a job, apply for a job, picking fruit, come here, just into the black economy. It's the easy way in. Difficult to leave again afterwards, but anyway. And so we've got this situation where, as a result of, as a result of getting rid of all these Europeans, we're now having to replace them with people from all over the world who are bringing all their families with them. And at the same time, as I say, 508,000 people emigrated last year. Well, if you're going to leave a country and go to another country, you're presumably going to do it because you think you're going to be better off in the other country, in the new country. And that's why people coming from poor countries want to come to this country. Of course, they're going to earn a lot more money and have a better standard of living here. But for anyone leaving the UK to go and live somewhere else, they're not going to go and live in a poor country. They're going to go and live somewhere better. They're going to go to Australia, or they're going to go to Canada. And the sort of people who are going to want to do that, the sort of people who are much more acceptable, like doctors and professionals. And so what we're having, as we know, as I mentioned this before, there's a sort of brain drain, because people get well qualified and go through school and university, and they come out and they look around. They think that, there aren't many prospects here. This is a sinking economy. Everything's getting poorer and shabbier and worse by the minute. And why not go off to somewhere new? And so what we're doing, we're swapping a lot of our brightest and cleverest for people from the third world. Now, I want to say also something about Jeremy Hunt's autumn statement, his budget, or whatever it's called these days. Now, the situation at the moment in the economy is not great. It's not great. We all know that since we left the EU, in the way that we've had all these problems with immigration as a result of leaving the EU, we've also got problems with the economy, and that it's doing very badly because we have really turned our backs on the biggest, richest, most successful market in the world. We don't want anything to do with them. And the ABR is now forecasting the biggest drop in living standards since the 50s, for 70 years. We've got a massive cost of living crisis, and all sorts of people are in debt and getting into trouble. Businesses are struggling. Public services are falling apart. The NHS, I mean, it used to be the pride of the nation. It's now getting so desperate and shabby and being gradually sold off. We've got problems with the police, we've got problems with the courts, we've got problems everywhere you look. Care is in a dreadful mess. A lot of this to do with a lack of workers and so on. We've got extremely weak growth in this country, almost no growth at all, and very weak productivity, about which no one knows quite what to do. We've got very little inward investment, unless you're the friend of the father-in-law of the Prime Minister, in which case you can probably get yourself $500 million to come and set up a battery factory, or to save a steelworks. I mean, otherwise people are not. Why are you going to come here? Why would you come to a country where, in order to do business with 27 countries across the Channel, you've got to be involved in all this hassle with paperwork and taxes and duties and so on. We've got millions of people living in poverty. We've got children in poverty. We've got people using food banks. I mean, the country's in a mess. It's in a terrible, terrible mess. Everything is really, really grim, and it's not getting any better. And so, really, all these government departments, desperately need more money. So, what do we do with this autumn statement? Well, we give away some money in taxes, give away 20 billion by cutting the rate of national insurance from 12 to 10p. And how do we pay for that? Well, what we do is freeze government spending in all departments except for defence and education. Freeze government spending so that as time goes by with inflation, they in fact will have to make cuts because the cost of everything they do is going to go up. Wages are going to go up over the years, but because their budgets are fixed, they're going to have to make cuts. So you cut spending in all these departments that are desperately needing more money in order to give a tax cut, which is not really a tax cut because they're not changing the tax thresholds, which means that, again, with inflation, every year people are going to be paying more and more tax. People are going to be moving up to higher tax bands. And so you're giving with one hand, taking more back with the other, and that's called the biggest tax cut in British history. It's just nonsense. And then you help businesses a little bit, having put corporation tax up from 19% to 24% earlier in the year. And of course, any increase in corporation tax just results in prices having to be put up, and so it's inflationary anyway. And this is all painted by Jeremy Hunt as some massive triumph, biggest tax cuts in British history. Just listen to what he says: in the face of global challenges, we've halved inflation. Remember when inflation went up to what, 11% or more? Nothing to do with the government. No, that was all the fault of Putin. The price of fuel, price of gas, electricity, nothing to do with government whatsoever. Completely helpless. Now it's come down because fuel prices have come down. Inflation's come down. It's the government has done it. It's government. Rishi, Rishi said he was going to do it. One of his pledges. He said it was wonderful, wasn't it? Rishi and Jazza, they've cut inflation. They have no control over it anyway because it's the Bank of England's responsibility. He says we've reduced our debt. I'm not at all sure that's true. And grown our economy. We can see how it's growing, can't we? Oh, yes. And as he says, as a country, we're sticking to a plan that is working. This autumn statement for growth, and just listen to this, it will attract, it's not maybe, could be, possibly, will attract £20,000 million of additional business investment every year for the next 10 years. Can you imagine that? 200 billion is going to be invested because he's taken 2p off national insurance, and we'll get it back with the fiscal drag. It's going to bring thousands, tens of thousands more people into work. It's a package which leaves borrowing lower, going to reduce borrowing, debts coming down. Everything's going to be better. And you just look at this and you think this is Jeremy Hunt, who was talking a few weeks ago about building throughout the UK 12 Canary Wharfs. That's what he said, 12 Canary Wharfs. I don't know where they're going to go. All over the country, 12 Canary Wharfs. Canary Wharf, this is in East London. It's the development of maybe 20 or 30 sort of 40-storey glass and marble and shiny office blocks, ultra-modern. Cost 2 billion. 12 of them cost another 24 billion, but all over the country. Don't know who's going to go in them, who's going to use them. These great office developments all over the country. A new Silicon Valley, and we, as I think it was Tobias Elwood the other day on television, so we're going to be a tech superpower. We've got some fantastic IT people. Some brilliant innovators, and of course, whenever they're successful, they go off to America. They sell out to American companies. But no, we're standing shoulder to shoulder. There are going to be three massive, enormous centres of IT and AI and all the rest of it, technology, in the future. They're going to be Silicon Valley in America, and there's going to be China and us. It's just also delusional. I mean, Hunt and Sinner, they're not stupid. They know the game's up. They know it's all absolutely hosted. I mean, I'm sure Hunt must have been embarrassed to deliver this drivel. He must know it's all rubbish. He must know nobody believes him, except for some of the newspapers. And I would have thought if Sunak has every chance that Sunak is thinking, well, game's up. I'm not going to turn this around by the end of next year. And when Hunt said that the cut in the national insurance was going to be brought in January rather than when it would normally have been brought in April. And when, having said 2 months ago there was no prospect for any tax cuts, he suddenly introduced these tax cuts. It looks awfully like they're going to have an early election, just get the hell out of it. I would have thought Sunak can't wait to get on that plane with his family off to California, just forget this whole nightmare and leave everyone else sorted out, and of course it's unsortable. So anyway, I just finally wanted to say something about one or two things that have caught my eye. Incidentally, it was noticed this morning. I noticed this morning that household energy prices, the price cap's going up 5%. So all our electricity and gas bills are going to go up 5% in April, which is nice. I noticed a story also that Cameron is being investigated by HMRC, it is said, because he didn't declare certain flights when he was working for Greensill. It's also been suggested that Greensill opened up offshore accounts for paying Cameron, that he was paid offshore. Whether that's true or not, I have absolutely no idea. I do know that his father, it turned out, had offshore accounts when he appeared in the Panama Papers when they were revealed a few years ago. But the thing that I thought was quite interesting is concerning the COVID inquiry. Now, it's not getting much publicity. It's a really important inquiry because it shows competence and integrity at the very centre of government throughout this period. But it's not getting much publicity. The papers aren't interested. BBC does very little. Channel 4 occasionally will do an item. It'll be the third or fourth item or something. But it's not getting the publicity it should be getting. Now, in the last couple of weeks, they've had the Whitty and Van Tam and Valence, the three scientists who were always on our televisions every evening during the pandemic, all being interviewed, and they've been asked about whether or not they were consulted about the famous Eat Out to Help Out scheme. This is Rishi Sunak's own scheme, the one that he was so keen to promote and so on, and it was said to have resulted in many thousands of deaths because it was a stupid thing to do and it was very risky and so on. As each of the scientists said, had they been consulted, they would have advised against it. And Whitty said, because it's been claimed that they were consulted, Whitty said there was no consultation whatsoever. Van Tam said he was absolutely not consulted and that the first I heard about it was on TV. And Valence said we didn't know about it till it was announced. And as I say, all three of them said they would have advised against it. Now Johnson, he said in his statement, it was discussed with Patrick and Chris. Now, nobody's going to be surprised that Johnson's lying about it. But what's more interesting is that Sunak has said in statements to the inquiry, he and Johnson will both be appearing in the next couple of weeks, which will be very interesting, but he has said in written statements, he said that no one raised any concerns. Didn't say who he asked or who might have raised concern or even knew about it before it was announced. But he also said, and it's much more serious, he said, I do not recall any concerns about the scheme being expressed during ministerial discussions, including those attended by the CMO and the CSA. That's Whitty and Valence. So he's saying that, implying they knew about it and nobody raised any concerns. The scientists are all saying they knew nothing about it. And I think I'm probably not alone in saying that if I were asked to choose between three very distinguished scientists giving evidence on oath, saying one thing, and a known serial liar, Boris Johnson, and a rather incompetent, inept and rather pathetic Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, saying another thing, I think I kind of know who I would believe. Anyway, that's all I have to say for today. If you've watched this far, thank you very much indeed. If you haven't already subscribed, I really would appreciate it if you do so, or if you know of anybody you think might be interested, I would really appreciate it if you pass on my name. And so until next week, thank you for watching and bye for now.